main reason why I even bother making these things is to protect my ships. The rigging, everything I put onto them, it's going to be a pain in the neck to dust, protect from harm. Got to put them in a case. They're water lined. If I'm going to put them in a case, I'm going to put a nice base on them. Now, what I'm going to show you here is not how to create a hyper-realistic representation of a specific ocean, but just kind of a quick and dirty way to get something that looks decent, and we'll just go with it. We're going to start with plastic cases. Come in a variety of sizes and shapes. You're going to look for something that's going to fit best to what you're trying to do. This ship just barely fits in this case diagonally, but it fits. Good enough for me. Bigger size ship is just going to need something bigger. So I ordered a whole bunch of these from Pioneer Plastics. When you order about a case of a dozen, they're going to come out to about $4 or $5 a piece, which is better than you're ever going to get them at a big store if you can even find one in the right proportions. Highly recommend checking out Pioneer Plastics if you need cases for your cars or whatever. Good place to check. Anyway, what you're going to get out of the box is a case that looks like this. Now, to create my water base, the method I use is I start with a bit of aluminum foil to get the initial crinkly look. Now, I do have some books up here that you can look at later if you want to see what ocean pictures look like. You get a whole bunch of books. The ocean can look a whole lot of different ways. You can find a very calm, almost mirror smooth finish in a protected harbor. You can find a whole lot of chop. Now, in 1/700 scale, you're not going to want to let the chop get out of hand. Oh, sure, it can look really dramatic and stuff, but you start getting way out of scale with it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start out with crinkled up aluminum foil as my initial base to start off on the right foot. So I'm going to take my nice, clean, shiny plastic base. I'm going to rough it up with some really coarse sandpaper. Make sure you get around the edges of it, because that's where you're going to want to seal down the best. Okay. Wipe that down, get the dust off. Now we've got a roughened surface that's going to be better for adhesion. Then, take us some aluminum foil. Of course, decided to rip. Make sure we get a piece long enough. It's wide enough, it'll work. Now, you could just crinkle it up by hand and then try to unroll it, mess with it a bit. You're going to get some kind of sharper edges. 700, I call it my clap method. I'm just going to... You hear that change in sound as you're, it's not that metallic clapping anymore as you, there we go. Now it's got, instead of crinkling and unraveling, which gives it a lot of sharp edges, this tends to give it a more round and almost organic look to it. I don't know if you can see the finish there.
It's like the ocean to me.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to start with that. Then, this glue, I buy this at Michael's. It's liquid fusion glue, about $5. Works on various materials. So I'm going to use this stuff, and first of all, I make sure I go around my edges, and then I'm going to fill in between.
What was the name of that glue?
Liquid fusion.
Liquid fusion?
Yeah. I think it's made in Fresno, actually. Kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, Michael's carries it. Just the fact that it kind of has a cross-medium applicability where you can glue foil to this and not, run into a lot of expense. You mix 2-part epoxy? You could, sure. I wouldn't bother. So I'm going to take this. Just going to lay it over top. And you're going to want to put something nice and heavy on it. First I'll go ahead and lay this out. You want to make sure that it overhangs your edges because we're going to use this to mask for while we do the rest of the process. So I'm just going to put some heavy weights on it, big thick book or whatever, just to keep it pressed down while the glue sets. So I'm going to move this out of the way. So that's what happens first. Now, once that glue is set, I'm going to take that thing out and paint it. No need to bother with model paints and airbrushing and stuff. Spray cans. Just run with spray cans. First thing you're going to want to do with that aluminum foil, though, is hit it with a good gray primer. That will take care of the metallic shine. It'll cling to the stuff and give your glossy blue paint something good to adhere to. Now, if you decide that you'd rather just skip the primer and just go straight to the blue paint, you end up getting blue paint that likes to just kind of pull away from the upper ridges of the foil. Even with the clap method, there's still little ridges. The gloss blue paint just likes to just pull away, and you get these little metallic shines all over it. This model is from one of my earlier days. I don't know if the camera's going to be able to pick this up. But there's actually a lot. There's a lot of metallic shine coming through this thing. This is before I really got into using the primer, and once I realized the need for the primer, I use it all the time now. So this is kind of an early example of learning, and a lot of this stuff I learn as I go along. So you'd hit it with the primer, let the primer dry for a few hours, then you'd come and you'd hit it with just gloss dark blue, whatever. I also like to spray a little bit of black with it, just to give it some tonality and variation. Now, having said all that, in fact, I did not use primer on that one because a couple nights ago when I was setting these things up for you, great, good can of primer, bring it out, spray, and there's no pressure in this thing. It leaked out somehow, betrayed by my primer. So I just had to go with the blue. Gave it a couple of coats. Here, this one has the blue with a bit of black. It's probably still a little bit of that metallic shine in it. Not what I wanted, but it is what it is. So, once that paint is dry, I'm going to hit this thing with a round of, let's see, where is it? Art Gel Medium. It's gloss acrylic art gel medium. I've heard of gesso. I'm not really sure what gesso is. I know the same Modern Masters brand makes a product called gesso, and this is labeled differently, so I assume there's some difference. Whatever the case is, I buy this at the art supply store in Westminster. I've not found this stuff at Michael's. Probably some other places you can find it, but Art Supply has it. Yes?
Is this the same thing as live powder?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. Now, I'm going to spread this with quite the advanced tool here. Plastic knife. It's like working a mayonnaise jar.
And where do you pick those up, Sean?
Plastic knives. You got to order them online.
Do you? Black market?
So I'm gonna drop a bit of this stuff on here.
Smart and final.
Smart.
Looks like a lot, but there may not actually be enough here. Yeah. So I'm gonna spread this stuff. And now you see why I have so much extra foil, and I've just left it on here for now, and I'm gonna leave the foil on till I'm completely done with all of my gel medium. Okay.
And this is going to dry when?
This takes about a day to dry. Well, maybe 3/4 of a day. Anyway, I'm not getting any real form to this. I'm just spreading it because I'm going to do a second round of paint and a second round of gloss medium on top of it. This is just the first stage. Now, there we go. You know what? That is about good enough. That's good enough for stage one. So, stage one, I then would set it aside, let it dry for about a day, and get me ready for stage two. Stage two, this one here, actually I put the stuff on it this morning, so in fact it's not 100% dry, but what I do with stage two is there's the gloss gel is on it, and then I would take my blue paint again and give it a lighter spritzing so that there's something of a three-dimensional effect to it. A little bit of layering, add a little bit of depth to this thing. Then, now that that second round of paint is on, I'm going to take my gel medium again, put a second round on this thing, only this time I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to the final finish of the stuff. I'm going to spread first.
The old salami and cheese on there.
So, actually, I think my gel is getting a little bit chunky here, so get a little bit of a, get the stuff.
Sean, doesn't that level out your wrinkling?
Rachel, right.
The initial one levels out the foil a little bit, but notice you could still see the crinkle to it. You hit it with the blue paint, and now you've got crinkle below, a little bit of a flat layer, and now the second layer, I'm going to go ahead and get some shape to it. Okay, I'm going to replicate an ocean going, you know what, I'll let the ocean go a little bit diagonal across this thing. Sure, you could use popsicle stick, you could use other kind of tools, whatever kind of tool you want to use on this thing. Now you don't want to see a lot of these sharp, jaggedy edges, not for 1/700 scale, not for the stuff I'm dealing with here. Now, if you were doing, say, a seaplane in 72nd scale, you might want to. And this stuff has enough ability to hold its shape that you could probably do it. If you wanted to do a raging ocean in 1/35th scale, like some, Vietnam riverboat, making a jump or something, or a special ops boat, probably this would not be quite what you're going to want for that. So anyway, I've gone ahead and I've created this kind of a somewhat diagonal wave pattern. Look at photos, sometimes the ocean looks this way. Sometimes it's crisscrossing, sometimes it's just totally random. This one I'm going to leave it like that, and by the time it's dry, it's going to have this kind of rippled direction effect to it. Then when my ship goes on, sure, it's coming diagonally across it. They do that sometimes. So,
How about a ship's weight? Can you do that?
I'm getting to that. That's next step. Okay, or that's a little bit, that's 2 steps from now. Okay.
Yeah, be patient over there. Patient,
So,
patience.
He's doing the presentation.
actually, I forgot. Does somebody have like a napkin or a paper towel? There was something. Okay. All right. So, once this dries in a day, by tomorrow, then, and only then, I would go ahead and start pulling this stuff taut against the sides and take, thank you, and take a, thank you too, I would take a sharp new X-Acto blade and carefully pull this tight and cut along the edges of it so that it's cut out to exactly the perimeter of the display base. And then you end up with something like this one, where it's cut right to the edge of it. You can see there's the foil underneath. Now eventually I'm going to put some black paint in here so we don't have that showing, but for now that's what it's going to look like below. Now this one, there's a couple of flaws in it, and that's because I've had this thing sitting around for a while and I picked up a few things from who knows where. But point being, that's what the finished ocean base is going to look like before we mount a ship to it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and mount a ship to this one and show you how I would do it. Now this guy, as a matter of fact, I just cut loose because as I'm rebasing them. I'm going to use this for a tank. I'm going to put this guy on this one so that I can display them on a shelf at my office that these fit very nicely onto. So, a couple ways you can do it. You can use some of the same fusion glue and spread it on the bottom and stick them down, or you can make use of the gel medium. This one is a little bit of a rare case. There's no bottom plate to this one. The kit just has it hollow. So what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to go ahead and pack in a little bit of this stuff underneath, and I'll stick him down on it. Now, you want to make sure I don't get it to spread up along the sides of it, because that'll create a real mess. But I'm going to go ahead and get some of this under here. And
We'll work at somewhat. When that dries, is it as firm as like a white glue or
Yep.
something?
Yep, it is. Stuff will hold real well.
So you're not concerned about that sitting up on the unevenness of your ocean?
Not really, and this is why this is me being lazy. So there he goes. Now, when that stuff dries, you're going to have some little inconsistencies and discontinuities in this thing. You'll have some spots where it bubbled up and there's a little hole there. You'll have spots where it just spanned across a wave instead of sitting down in it. That's just what's going to happen with this method. Like I said, this is the quick and dirty and easy way to do it. Now, more advanced ship, or I won't say more advanced, but the more advanced way to do this sort of thing is to actually cut a shape out of your base so that it sits down in, build up the water next to it. This is just the quick and dirty way of doing it.
I'm just wondering whether you might take a template cut to put in there with temporary glue.
You could.
Yeah.
You could. That does
Then
mean
your-
very
then your ship
carefully.
would sit down in the
Yeah.
water a little better.
This is true. The other way you could do is put it on like this and just build up around it.
Mhm.
It's another way to do it. Like I said, this is the quick and dirty way to do it. So, final one here that I'm going to show you for tonight is this guy who is one step beyond that. I've glued him down, and I've gone ahead and kind of, well, like I said, when you do this, once it dries, you're going to have little bubbles and openings and things. You'd go back in either with a little more of this stuff, or sometimes I would use like Tester's Clear Part cement and just pump a little bit into those little holes and chase them around until they all disappear. Once they're filled in, like this one, I've got it all filled in, it's all solid there. Now, this guy is actually, I had pulled him off of another base and put him on this one, same reason I'm going to use it for a tank. But he's now sitting actually a little bit high in the water. If he's going to be sitting that high, I might as well give him a nice wake pattern. So, in this case, I actually do have a photo of the actual ship moving at speed. And this is a pretty dramatic pattern here. I kind of like it. So, I'm going to go ahead and
Not so
first...
fast.
Well, we didn't have much time.
I
for it,
know,
so-
I know.
Okay. Now, a case example here. If you decided to be lazy and was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it on with, just brush on some white paint and be done with it, you end up with something like this, where I tried to be a little dramatic with the white paint, but it ends up streaky. It does not look right. You really need something of form before you start putting the white paint on. Now, if you compare this against my Maryland, this is the first one I really went into the matching the wake pattern to a photo of the ship going at speed. This one, I did form up the gel medium into the right shapes, and then later I went back and dry brushed with flat white paint. Now, could you use gloss white? Should you use gloss white? Thought about it and I decided no, the flat white actually I think gives a better foamy look to it than just gloss white would.
And if you apply that with a brush,
That would be applied with a brush over the dried gel medium, certainly not while
so
it's
you
wet.
get texture, but a rather discrete texture.
Yeah, just this is dry brushed. on top of it. But before we get to that, of course, we've got to get that gel medium in place. So, back to, oh, come on, you. Back to the South Dakota. I'm going to try to get it something like this wake pattern. Now, really, it's going to flare out past the edge of the base. That's fine, but I'm going to get some of this dramatic stuff going on. So, I'm going to take my gel medium again. And of course, like Elmer's glue, this stuff goes on white and then dries clear. So while it's white, we can see what we're doing. And then later when it's clear, lose track of where it was because now it's clear. But the dry brushing will find it again. So I'm going to go ahead and, should I use a different tool? Probably. Lazy. I'm doing this anyway. So, sorry, it's kind of hard to do this in the direction of the camera.
Yeah.
So it looks like we got a little bit of a diagonal coming off at first. Then we get another one a little further back. You know, we're going to be able to shuffle this around and move it until we're satisfied with it. And if a little bit splashes up on the hull, well, the hull gets wet, that's fine. If too much splashes on it, then you got a problem, so you got to watch it. So this is going to come out a bit and then go straight back. So somewhere about here, we're going to make it start going straight back. And then looks like there's some more rough as it's close to the hull. And now we can actually start getting a little bit of that sharper splash going on. But again, you don't want to be too much for 700 scale. If you're doing 3/50th, you can make the splash a bit taller. And the bigger the scale, the more you can allow the water to make itself known. So we're going to get some wave going. And the point of having it going at high speed is you can get some more wave pattern and cover up the fact that it's actually sitting a little high in the water. Like I said, I'm not bothering with cutting it out and sinking it in completely. I'm just quick and dirty just to get these things based and protected so I can move on to building another ship. So we're going to go ahead and do it like this. A little bit more of this. It's okay to push it up against the side or else. And then it looks like this guy, this stuff just keeps doing that. And then in the back here, we're going to go ahead and like that, work it in a little bit, and then we're going to start slapping it a little bit to rough it up. So here's the foam of the propeller churning. So once I get the dry brushing on this, that's going to make a real nice white-capped appearance. Go ahead and I think emphasize this a little bit more. And anything that ends up hanging over the edge, you're eventually going to have to come back with your knife and shave it flat so the lid can go back on. So there's half of it. Then I'd swing them around and finish the other half to match while it's still wet so you can balance it out. And you're not going to be exactly symmetrical. I mean, water splashes around, so the trend is obvious, but the exact symmetry, if it was exactly symmetrical, it's too perfect. I don't want to be that perfect. Here it is going in a bit of a different angle. Again, you can see the very dramatic shape of it. If you can get a picture of the actual ship or class of ship that you're trying to do from overhead, and you can't always get this, but when you can, this is your best way of finding out what is this ship really about, how does it really move. Remember, when it's moving slowly, there may be no wake at all. It may have just barely churning the water. You could do it at anchor. This one here, New Mexico is at anchor. I decided, you know what, let's do a really flat sea, and let's just glue them down straight. I dropped the anchor chain into the water there. Of put the flag in the back end and the jack staff up front so that he's in port. There you go. And yeah, like my Maryland, this is going at pretty much maximum speed for what the Maryland could do. Also be aware that if you've got a ship that went through a refit and they added bulges to the hull, the shape is going to be different. That wake pattern is going to be different than it was when it didn't have those bulges. Seen pictures of this same class without the bulges. It's a much sleeker line. This is slightly bulged, and it developed this interesting double pattern here. And I've seen a photo of, I think, West Virginia, which was extremely bulged later on. And that thing, just once that water hit that extra bulge, you get one wake and then boom, this other huge wake that just really bizarre looking. Looking forward to doing one of those because it's so different. So anyway, that's...
See pictures of some of these cruise ships going along.
Oh, yeah.
There's very little bow wake, but there's quite a churn. From
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bow in the
And
back.
you look at your show. That picture over there, or that box art of that Independence class, you got a huge churn in the back, and not much up front.
Very little side.
But again, same ship, different ocean conditions, different speeds. You're going to get a whole lot of different effects. And if you wanted to go to a bigger scale, you have the opportunity to see something more dramatic. Now, do you really want to do huge waves on a 700? That'd be an awfully big wave. Do it in 350, you might be talking. Got this. This is a 350th scale German S-boat. Okay. A lot of churn.
Not that long enough.
It's smaller than any of the ships I've got here, but it's double the scale. But this is the kind of speedboat thing that, in this scale, you could still do something pretty dramatic with it.
You could have that one coming out of the water.
Right. Now, if you were doing it in 700 scale, you'd be having one like this big. You'd glue them on top of the water and have a nice choppy wake, but it'd still be little, really little. So I think that's kind of the rundown on this approach to it. Again, these are not meant to replicate anything really specific. If you wanted to have, a little bit of land in the corner, I haven't even developed that technique yet. This is just quick and simple. Mount them in a base, put a case on them so they can be displayed, and I can move to the next one and feel comfortable that all this is protected. So that's kind of the rundown on it.